Hi, I'm Shaka Hislop, and you're here at Extra Time TV.
Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Extra Time TV. This is Sooklal, and I'm joined today once again by my buddy from Scotland, James Baird. Today we're going to speak about the 7-0 defeat Trinidad Tobago suffered at the hands of the United States men's national team. We spoke about this in the preview, and just to do a summary of things, James, the final score was obviously 7-0. 2 goals from Jonathan Lewis, Jesus Ferreira, Paul Ariola, and Miles Robinson. James, we spoke about this in great detail before, so you guys could verify and go back and look at the preview that we did. I'll put that below and a link in above as well. James, first things first, before we get into the nitty-gritty of this game, what was the initial reaction to this 7-0 defeat?
I think my initial reaction was, I was a bit shocked at first, but I half expected it, to be honest, because we know the problems that the Trinidad camps had. And to be honest, this American team is a pretty good team. Even although they're not the biggest names, it's a lot of the younger team, the Olympic squad. They have a lot of very good players out there. So, I half expected it to be, at least give Trinidad a few goals, maybe not 7. But America really came good and kind of whipped their tails a little bit.
Yep. So, we're going to take a quick look at the, the statistics of this particular game, because everybody knows me as a stats guy. So the possession was 72% to the US and Trinidad Tobago 28%, which from visually, if you just looked at the game, you could see that. Fouls, 15 for the US, 11 for Trinidad Tobago. 2 yellow cards from us, which I was surprised because knowing our physical condition, but we'll get to that. Red cards, obviously, thankfully, there were none. Offsides, 6 to them, 1 to us. Corner kicks, 3 to them, 1 to us. And they had 1 save to make, which was to 6 for our guy, Adrian Fonset. And, also the lineup for the US, they went with a 4-3-3, James. With Ferreira, Lewis, and Ariola up front, who did really well. And they had Tuna and, a bunch of new guys, Costa in midfield, with the other 2 guys, Vines, Long, Robinson, and Herrera. And Trinidad went with what we suspected, James, the 4-3-3, with Telfa up front, Bonval on the right, Mitchell, Fortune, Jones in the middle. But anyway, it's 4-3-3. And before we get to all those things, one key moment that really, stuck out to me was that the actual, the physical fitness of the players, James. So it was very clear, and I'm going to state this very clearly before I start. None of us were expecting a victory in this particular game. Trinidad Tobago has not played any competitive games for a long time. We've had no professional football. And also, these guys are also guys that I've never met before. So I honestly, this is my initial reaction, compared to yours, James, that I was expecting, we probably would have gotten a resounding defeat. I'm not surprised about that. But in terms of, the scoreline, 7-0 is never good. It's very hard to really look at a 7-0 scoreline and say, okay, that's good. And I'm pretty sure when Terry agreed to this game that I think he probably knew, okay, it's highly likely we're gonna get smacked around. And I think now the key thing is to look and see which there were very obvious errors that we may not have seen if we played maybe a smaller team. Now, some could argue this, that maybe some people are saying this was a leap too far. I personally disagree, but I understand why some people would say that. Maybe this game was just a jump too far for these guys. But for me personally, I think, as I said before we get into the nitty-gritty, that, Trinidad and Tobago, you learn a lot more in defeat than you do in a victory in a lot of ways. And I think questions that they may not have asked themselves, the players individually, they will now, because they looked mismatched physically, movement-wise. The US were just much more fluid. As we said in our preview before, James, Gregg Berhalter has stated openly for everyone that he likes to make teams positionally disorganized. And you saw that with our back four. And to their defense, it was a bunch of guys who didn't really play together. They played, maybe trained for a couple days, maybe a couple hours. And it was very evident because the movement and the fluidity and fitness of the American players were clearly there to see. And it should be understandable based on their playing style, and basically they've been playing football compared to our guys. So now that I've got that little mini rant out of the way, James, what do you think about the approach Trinidad took for this particular game in terms of formation? We said 4-3-3 and maybe the 4-2-3-1. So what was your reaction to that?
I think, I don't, as a fellow coach, I won't slaughter another coach's tactics or anything like that. If it was me, as I said, I would have went with a 4-2-3-1. I just think it was too many new players in positions that, to me, they looked out of sorts. Even to the extent, Jamal Jack, who's an old teammate of mine, I find because of his physical size now, when he was younger, he could play left back, but now he's such a big guy. I think he found it very difficult at left back, and he was getting caught inside all the time, which was obviously given the American, Areola saw plenty of space there to attack. So that was an issue we had. And then Pena, we didn't know anything about. So to me, to go with a 4-3-3, it was very dangerous when it was a lot of new faces. And I'll be honest with you, as I say, I don't like to criticise, but there's not a lot of positives I can think out of. Individual performances. Fonset, from my records that I took, he had 10 saves in the first half. Maybe could have done better one or two of the goals, but it's a very difficult one to come out and say anything positive. Trimmingham looked out of shape. Archer, the two of them didn't really. There was no unity between the two of them, and even Jones, who I was really looking forward to seeing, because he was playing in more of a central midfield role, he just looked out of sorts as well. So it was a bad day at the office for everybody. But on the other hand, I thought America were pretty awesome for periods of the game. Leggett, Areola was fantastic. Lewis, he scored his goal well. Ferreira was absolutely wonderful. Really was. And even going all the way down the back line, I thought Vines had a good game. Long had a very good game. Herrera had a good game. So, there was a lot. You could say we were really bad, but America were pretty good as well.
Yep, and I raised this question before, James. At some point, I think when we were reacting, you and Kevon were reacting to the US squad selection. We knew. Kevon follows the MLS, so do I, so do you. And I put this question to you: who benefits more from this game? Does Gregg Berhalter and his men, who obviously are more well-drilled team, with they didn't have the issues that Trinidad and Tobago had in terms of obviously the normalization committee, lack of football, global pandemic has affected us just like everybody else. But they still had players who were playing competitive football. They've been working together a bit more. Who do you think this game benefits more? Does it benefit Gregg Berhalter and his men, or does it benefit Terry and our national team?
I thought at first it would have benefited us in terms of playing a team at that higher level. I think it's probably worked against us, because I think a lot of those younger players, especially now, heads could go down, so I hope they don't. But really, it definitely benefited this American team, because they're going to be firing on all cylinders. They talked about during the game about this Olympic qualifying, and I think something like 8 or 9 of this team could play in the Olympics. So they have a great up-and-coming team. Even from the goalkeeper right through. Everybody looked very good. Some of the passes was from Yule. Some of the passes, the switches was fantastic. The overlaps, the underlaps. There's so many things you could say that they did well. And as I say, because our players for Trinidad hadn't played together, we were just getting caught out. We couldn't read the game. We couldn't read the moves that they were going to do. We didn't know where, for example, our defensive partner was positionally. So there's a lot of work to do, especially in time for that Guyana game.
Yep, just to add to that, I highlighted a couple things. You mentioned movement. We spoke about Gregg Berhalter's style of play. He always said, and this was basically his exact words on, when he sees teams that are, obviously, quote unquote weaker, he comes at you with the 4-3-3 and attempts to disorganize you. And he did from the get-go. They went at the Trinidad and Tobago defense and threw us off, and we got that first goal, which I think is an indication of Gregg's style of play. And obviously, Terry and his guys are going to go back after this game and look at this game and sit with the players and say, okay, this is how far off we are from where we need to be. And I think this is another part of the job that I think a lot of people, and fans who look at the game, they think it's just, let's try different formation, let's try different players, the mentality and the approach to this game. Because I had some criticisms of a couple players, but I'll get to that later on. And it's minor because I'm also giving them the benefit of the doubt because of the match fitness, but we'll get to that. But the high pressure they gave us, we simply had no answer for it. These guys were probably used to a certain pace. And this is why international football is important. Dennis said it before. Any coach would say it before. We need high quality friendlies. And you could see these guys were having a difficult time when we were in possession. For the few seconds that we were in possession, I saw misplaced passes simply because I think the pace of the game was just too fast. And these guys were just, not acclimatized with each other positionally. As you said, you can know anybody who knows an ounce about football knows that you need that chemistry in addition to the fitness as well. And physically, we were being run ragged by these guys. And also, the combination plays and the passing combinations of the US were almost telepathic. Whereas our guys I saw in a couple situations where we'd have the ball, I think Pena or maybe a couple other guys, I can't remember they would get the ball possession. And then you could see they would have to stop, hold the ball and look. And at this level of football, you don't have that time. You don't have that time on the ball. And, as a coach told me before, the game is the best teacher. So, these guys, they got exposed, and this is a perfect point for self-reflection. Do you think, James, that yes, this was a tough game. Yes, we got defeated 7-0. But do you think, based on, I'm seeing a lot of comments and even some quote-unquote analysis, which was like downright laughable at times from some other people, where, it almost seems as if people were expecting us to win, James. What do you think about that?
I think, obviously, everybody has pride in their country. So people wanted to see us at least project the fact that we could win. Maybe not necessarily win, but at least push them back, challenge them in areas, put them under pressure. And to be honest, if you take away the penalty, I don't think we had a shot on goal. And that's very sad. And as I say, we'll talk about the penalty in a minute. But I just think we didn't do enough off the ball. For example, we allowed them to play. It was at times they were just knocking the ball about like they were Brazil. And then we were standing off. And then when they would play that killer pass, we were always behind play. And we were getting caught out. And if you look, they must have whipped the ball in, I think, the first half about 18 times across the face of our goal from either the right or the left channel. Now, to me, there has to come a time as a player you say, well, they've done this 8 times. We have to then do something about it. And we just did not learn from our mistakes, and we kept doing it. And every time they punished us. Let's be honest, Fonseca had quite a few saves. I would have said in the first half they could have had at least another 7 goals. They had a few corners as well. So it was a bad day at the office, as I said. The only positive I could say is I thought our striker Telfer, he ran with the ball 2 or 3 times strongly, but he just had no support. He was literally like a steam train trying to run through a wall. It was not going to happen, but it was, as I say, it was a very disappointing performance. Where does Terry go from here? That's a good question.
Yep, and I know it's been rumored that Trinidad Tobago has a couple friendlies in between. I can't verify that, but that's the word on the street, folks.
We definitely need that. They need something now to pick us up, because if we go into that Guyana game with this dark cloud hanging over our heads, albeit it could be a different squad selection because of players' availability, but still, I think he would have expected a lot better from who played, and I'm sure he will admit that. And it was even players that I thought might get a chance, like Angleron, who we talked about, Jimenez. But obviously, there's reasons that we do not know why they didn't play,
And speaking about, I'll get to that. But there was a couple of moments. So we conceded goals from various different scenarios on the wings, some just on both sides, and then also set pieces. That goal we conceded from the corner where our defense looked like they were fast asleep, where the centre back passed to the other centre back and it was scored. It must be, and I'm pretty sure Terry's probably going to let these guys get an earful, but tactics or not, a lot of these guys who are, I mean, whether you're a professional player or not, there's certain basics in the game, James. You're a former professional football player. I played a little bit, but the simple things like just simply paying attention, being on your toes, marking your player, being positionally aware, whether you're using zonal marking or man marking in the box. It's just standard for an international player. So when you see games like goals being conceded like that, it must be a concern for Terry, and I'm guessing he's going to have to address that. And I'm guessing, the level of opposition, I said this before at the beginning, showed up, where these guys may have been complacent. And I'm also, as we said before, they haven't played together. That definitely plays into it. Match fitness also plays into it. Your concentration levels drop. But a lot of those goals, I think, with specific training and working with these guys, could have been avoided, James. What do you think about that? I'm not saying we would have won, but some of those goals could have been avoided.
I mean, the one you're talking about, for example, I think it actually came from a free kick near the corner spot. But what I would say is, at that point, I'm not defending anybody because I thought defensively we were pretty woeful. But I think Trimmingham had just went off with his injury. Now, if you're a player with a little knowledge or a little bit insight, you're going to say, well, my centre-back's off, I have to go cover. To me, nobody did that, and it obviously left Archer in there. And obviously then when the two centre-backs knocked it to each other and he had an open goal to head into. So, I mean, to me, game awareness comes in there. And this is why, for example, me as a former goalkeeper, I'm an organiser. I'm organising every second of the game. So I'm very surprised at international level, we're not doing that. You could say they switched off, but there was too many instances in the game that we switched off. And then another thing is Jamal Jack was playing left back, but he's also a centre back, so he could have tucked in, especially because it was a set play, and gave that cover. We didn't do it, and obviously we saw what happened.
Yeah, so these are things Terry would definitely have to look into, and of course, it looked like we were going to have a redeeming moment in terms of maybe possibly getting on the score sheet. With the penalty that was awarded to us with a incredible bit of individual skill. Why is his name eluding me right now? But we had some. Was it Telfa? No, it wasn't Telfa. But anyway, we got a penalty kick. Alvin Jones stepped up and it was saved. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it was Jabari Mitchell, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I think it was anyway. But the penalty, especially being a former goalkeeper, I always watch the players run up. And as soon as Alvin Jones stepped up, I saw him tip his head and then look. Now, it was, to me, he telegraphed it right away. So if I was playing, I would have probably saved it too. So to me, sometimes we need to learn. We don't show any kind of body language, and that's what he did. And as I say, the goalkeeper made a great save. And then he followed up with a rebound as well. And you could see his joy because he wanted a shutout in his debut and he got it. But it was a pretty poor penalty. And as I say, it's a man that is an experienced guy, Alvin Jones. He obviously scored the goal against America that is a big talking point during the game. So it was disappointing, very disappointing.
Yep, because the reason why I brought it up, in terms of morale, of course we lost 7-0. That's pretty hard and tests your character and maybe builds character. And maybe that's what Terry's going for, because many teams before, for those of you who don't know, I pay attention to a lot of sports and, historic teams. Many teams have in the past, the ones that really defied odds, played games like this where they played opposition that was vastly superior, and it sort of kind of galvanized the teams, and not just in football but in other sports. So, but missing that penalty, Alvin Jones obviously is one of the senior figures along with Formset on the team. And as you said, I am not a goalkeeper, but I actually guessed correctly by just looking at the game. And I'm thinking, you really want to send a message to at least, even though you're still going to lose, you still want to try to get that penalty, because it also affects, maybe it will affect Alvin Jones as well, his self-esteem in terms of it. No, or maybe he may bounce back and just score a boatload afterwards. But, it does, reflect, overall, he's a senior player and this is where we are right now. I'm not picking on Alvin Jones. I'm a fan of him. I think he's a really good player. Those, from W Connection and, obviously that goal against USA was a highlight thing, but he's always been a pretty solid wing back. I saw in the game that he, there was a couple times where he did some, some solo runs where he looked effective. If he had the right players, it could have been effective. But, with that being said, missing that penalty would have definitely may have raised his spirits a little bit. But I agree with you. I think it was telegraphed and it should have been better.
One of the interesting things, just before you move on there, is I heard the commentator say during the game that he was playing in centre midfield because it was a potential move to another MLS team. Mm-hmm. So, which I find very interesting because, I mean, obviously, as we know him as a attacking fullback, you know. So, was that why Terry changed things up? You know, I mean, it's funny because we'll never know why unless we speak to Terry, obviously, why players played in certain positions. But it was interesting to get that little bit of insight that was why he could have played there in centre midfield.
Yeah, he must have seen something in training or tried something, or maybe, you know, but you're right. And we did speak about this before. You know, some of the benefits of this game is that you have a worldwide audience compared to maybe if you played another team. So, you know, a lot of these guys maybe, you know, had that in their mind. But, you know, just moving along from that now. So the result, you know, a lot of people were saying at halftime, I saw the tweets, I saw the messages that, you know, we're going to get 10 or whatever. And, you know, that's the fans' right. You know, they're fans. But I have to admit, one of the few positives I did see when they made some substitutions in the midfield, I was impressed with Angeron because, you know, the team was obviously in disarray. And he did seem, when he did get on the ball, there was a little more composure from him than maybe the other guys. Because I saw, you know, at times, you know, the ball, we were losing possession. You know, sometimes the passes, straightforward passes, were not going where they're supposed to. And, you know, it wasn't perfect. But you can see what he adds to the game. You know, the possession kind of balanced off. I saw we started to create a little more combinations. It was not perfect. I think there was one turnover by him. But I have to admit, just by my observation, you can see his mind and his style of play. And, you know, I'm thinking if I had to assess the players, he would probably be one of the players that I think had a positive run out in this particular game.
So it's interesting that, I mean, I thought I saw Muckett come on and do well, and there was a little interchange, and they actually pressed America back a few times in the closing stages. But I'll be honest with you, I thought America dropped the pace. Mm-hmm. I thought they kind of started to knock the ball a bit more, and they changed a little bit. Instead of playing wide, they started to try and play a little bit through the middle again in the last 20 minutes, which, I mean, I don't like to see teams drop in, you know, intensity and things, even although, yes, I don't want them to go kill us. But I thought they did kind of ease off a little bit, which obviously allowed us to, you know, push forward a little bit too. So, I mean, as I say, he's one definitely for the future. I saw Noah Powder came on. I thought Matthew Lewing got himself involved. He obviously got that yellow card with Jabari Mitchell as well. But it was an interesting choice of substitutions at the time. I thought they'd change them all at halftime, you know?
Yeah.
But he did not do that. So he waited, obviously, until a little bit into the second half. But as I say, if there's anything positive, yes, it's good for them to come on. But I'm still scratching my head to find really key positive moments. With the exception, as I say, I mean, I thought the penalty we could have scored. I thought Fonset had some good saves, although, you know, positionally he was a little off at a few of the goals, but generally you think he had 12 or 14 saves altogether. Bonval made some nice runs at periods of the game, but again, there was no support. And Alvin Jones as well, as I say, he got forward, but again, to me, there was no cohesion. The midfield three were not playing as a three. You know, they were playing spread out. And I think that was just the story of the night.
Yep. And, you know, before, when we were doing the match preview, we had no point of reference, you know, when we were discussing the first match. You know, we've never seen this national team play, even though Terry's been in charge for a year, you know, because of the pandemic and so on. This would be his first game. So now that we've seen Terry play, and, you know, we've gotten, I shouldn't say an understanding, but we've seen his first game. You know, what is your initial reaction to his approach using the 4-2-3 and style? I mean, I know this is probably a rough game, a tough game to really make a full assessment because it's only one game. But now that we've seen this first game and now that we could draw some conclusions, do you think that Terry is going to continue with this 4-3-3, or he'll perhaps change it? Or maybe this is just, okay, this is the style of play we're going to work with and we're going to stick with that. I'm going to play it until we get better. What do you think?
Well, I think coaches these days have to live and die with their decisions. And I think there's a reason why he chose that. He knows that maybe when it comes to competition time, when he has a full selection of players, he can use that. But as the old 80s and 90s songs, things can only get better. And I really hope, or the only way is up. I really hope these things come to pass because, as I say, it was a hard one to watch. It was a hard first game. I mean, as I say, Terry would not have wanted that as his first game, although obviously they say he picked the game in a sense, but it's a difficult one to take, any loss, 7 goals, but he'll be planning already. He'll be looking forward to the next game and, what can he change, and he'll be trying to pick up the morale a little bit as well.
Okay. And what do you think about, some people are raising the issue that, this game maybe came too early for this team. Do you agree or disagree with that statement?
When I first heard it, I always say go with your gut at what you say first. And I always say that first, I didn't like it as a first game. I know we discussed it, I mean, we broke it down. I said, well, okay, there could be outcome positives that come out of it. But now I've seen the result, I think I'll go back with what I said, that it was probably a second or third game, down the line, or when you had the full complement of players, because a 7-0 loss, especially to some younger players, could really take them time to go over. And as I say, we don't have time to go over it. We've got Guyana in 8 weeks or whatever it may be. So I think it was maybe a little bit of a wrong decision. But as you mentioned, sometimes it takes tragedy or issues or to really help a team to find the heart and the passion. Maybe that'll get that desire in them and they can carry that into the next game.
And also, I mean, with that being said, we did he have much choice in the friendlies? Because, I mean, arranging friendlies for Trinidad and Tobago has, historically been quite difficult until recent years when we started to play some quality teams like Argentina and Uruguay during Tim Key's era. And, I think John Williams as well. But, getting friendlies is not as simple as it sounds. It's a lot of arrangements that has to take place, even with all the pandemic conditions. It's not like we can say, and I was explaining this to some fans, it's not like, okay, I want to play Argentina, let's go play Argentina. There's a lot of administrative work that has to go in behind the scenes, assuming teams even want to play us. And, it's very complicated. So, while people had mixed views about us playing the United States men's national team, is it that we didn't really have much choice? I mean, let's say he chose not to play the US men's national team. I mean, it wasn't, I don't think friendlies now are really as easy to arrange as they usually are. But anyway, everybody has their opinion on that. So,
I think with COVID though, we had to pick a team relatively close. But one thing I will say is, I think he strategically picked it because he wanted to see certain players in America. Yeah. And if you think about it, I mean, the positive you could take is he got to see, for example, Pena, all these guys in a training camp, that are based up there for the future. So, I mean, you could take that as a positive out of it,
Yeah. Yep. Listen, there's no sugarcoating it. And we know Terry Fenwick as a personality. He is not going to sugarcoat it as well. I'm pretty sure he was very much aware. I even heard the US commentators saying the same thing, that, with lack of match fitness, chemistry, playing time, they actually complimented him. They're saying that, that they could learn, which was, it shows that even they understand our situation. And, they, perhaps took their foot off the brakes, as you said, and maybe tried a different tactic in the second half. But, we'll see if the gamble pays off. And I think, we'll see really soon, which I always said, I think, Terry has taken over the national team at the worst possible time. Like, I don't envy any national coach who took over, to be honest, whether it be Terry or anybody else right now. I think that's an uphill task. I get a headache thinking about it because there's so many limitations. And, moving forward, I guess they'll probably announce in the next couple of days who we're going to be playing. I listened in another interview where the game was broadcast where former players like Ken Wynne-Jones and others highlighted that there's a lot of things that needs to be fixed behind the scenes, which we already know. But, we're going to stick strictly with footballing matters on the field. We'll leave that for another day. Do you think that, let's say, we get some friendlies against some Caribbean islands, do you still think, I mean, I'm trying to be very realistic here, do you think we have enough time to even get ready for March?
It all depends on if Terry can call in the foreign contingent, let's say. Because, I mean, let's be honest with you. He spent a good part of the year training with a local squad.
Yeah.
Now, because of wanting to see these American players, he may have left some behind, let's say, you know? So there may have been players that could have played a big part in this game, but because of wanting to see other players. So there is players to use locally. But I think he will be hoping, obviously, for your Highlands, Molino, these guys to come back and for the game against Guyana. Now, will he get, as I say, these friendly games before that? Well, I hope so, because, as I say, to go from this game to the Guyana game would be ludicrous, in my opinion, you know? So we need to get a good result, especially, you know? Does that mean we have to take a smaller, team? Sometimes you have to do these things to build the blocks and, get to the top of the walls. So if he has to do that, I think he will. And he'll also be looking at players. I mean, at the end of the day, as we know, this team was not the finished article by any means. You know, it was very much a put-together squad. And I'm sure he's starting to think now, what should I do? When are we going to start in training again? Will it be, they're back on the first, will it be then? So there's a lot of things he's going to be considering now. And as I say, I think they will take a few games between now and the Guyana game. And he will look at other players and he will decide if any of the guys that played tonight will feature, obviously, in that game against Guyana.
Yep, so, James, I'm going to put you in a character mode now. So you're Terry Fenwick. It's 7-0, after the US men's this game today. What do you tell the players? What do you tell your players after a game like this?
Well, you have to pick them up. At the end of the day, if you go in and roll them now at 7-0, it's not going to do any good, Yeah, if there's any players, for example, you want to give a bit of a bollocking, you'll do that a few days down the line, You'll tell them what they did wrong. But at the end of the day, after this game, I mean, if it was me, I would go into the change rooms now and say, guys, we know all the hurdles we came across, but I want you to remember how that felt to take 7 goals from America. And use that now for what we're going to build for the World Cup qualifiers, because if we do well in these World Cup qualifiers, we will play America again in September.
Yep.
And I will use that as inspiration, So I think, part of being a coach is also being a motivator. And you also have to make sure that there's leaders in that dressing room. And I'm sure, for example, like I know, as I say, Jamal Jack, my old teammate, he very much is. Fonset's experienced. Even Telfer, to me, he really commanded the team a little bit, and Alvin Jones. So there's characters in there that will help. But Terry will he might have to butter up some players, but as a coach, you have to be all different things to all different people, and he knows that.
Yep. And do you think, James, I addressed this before in other videos, but do you think that people are expecting too much too quickly from this team?
I think we expected too much too quickly because of COVID.
Yeah.
I think if we had been playing football all through this year, if there had been local matches, pro league matches, it wouldn't have been such a big thing. But at the end of the day, we've had nothing for the best part of a year. We never had this game. It was kind of a spectacle for the support. We had it broadcasted locally. So everybody was excited. So to now lose 7-0, it's kind of knocked the stuffing out of us a little bit. But at the end of the day, we dust ourselves down and we come back tomorrow again.
Yep, correct. And that's the thing about us at Extra Time TV. We try to look at this thing from a wider perspective rather than just be, reactionary and, react like, oh my God, we lost 7-0. That's horrible. Get rid of Terry. We try to look at both things. That's why we have our man James, who is a former Scottish goalkeeper, and he's actively involved in Trinidad Tobago football. So it's not just, two guys talking about football. He knows what he's talking about, folks. And then there's me, of course, the other guy. So, just to end things off, because, there's a lot of things we could really dissect from this. But the qualifying games are basically, as far as I'm concerned, pretty soon. Our guys there's a lot of COVID restrictions all around the world. Would Terry even be allowed to bring in his players from Europe? Because I'm wondering now if that would be an issue, because we already have been known to be very disorganized behind the scenes. That is also a mountain of a task, because we'll have Levi Garcia, who's in Greece. We have guys like, Keston Julian, who's in Malta, Kaleem Highland, these guys. And then we have the other Garcias and these guys. Would we be allowed to even get these players and, to play for the qualifiers?
Well, I think obviously because it is an official FIFA date, yes, we should have access to them. Now I'm trying to remember, is the game the game we have coming up in March here, or is it in Guyana? I think I can't remember actually, but will he get them for a week beforehand, probably not. He might get them, 2 or 3 days. Generally, that's what happens in these windows, So that's a problem. So then he's not going to get a chance to necessarily work with them. So basically, between now and then, he's going to have to work with the local ones he has and start saying, well, this is where this guy may play, and this is where my foreign-based guy may play. And he may have to have a backup or a few backups, until the time comes. So, and then again, you never know who can get injured between now and that period of time as well. So he's going to have an A plan, a B plan, a C plan, and probably a D plan the way things are going at the moment. So a lot of organising. I mean, it's interesting because one of the things I was very impressed with, for example, the American team, is how up to date they are in tech. You saw them with the tablets, and I think that's the way football has become now. We have all of these different plans, and you have to do it. You have them there, and they had at game time. They were able to show the players, and so it's something that maybe we need to get involved in too. That side of things.
Yep, and anybody who knows me, everybody who has worked with me in Trinidad Tobago football and in other countries know that I'm a huge, not just an advocate, but somebody who uses this sort of technology. And I've been trying for many years to try to really get people wise to it. There are people in Trinidad and Tobago who are aware of its use and they're aware that it's important, but they still don't believe in it because to use this sort of technology, you need the right people involved to understand how you use it. And, I always said, this is stuff we should have been doing way back since 2008. It's 2021 and we still haven't found a way to implement analytics. You can bring the tools, you could rent from whoever, but if you don't have people who know how to analyze and use these things, it's not going to make a difference. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't use it. I am all for it. And like you said, that's one of the things I noticed as well. I've worked around teams that used it. I've actually actively participated in this. And I think that sort of analysis, especially now with our limitations, is more important than it would have been even before because of the lack of football, making educated and calculated decisions in our preparations and tactical scenarios, real-time situations, and getting your staff and your players acclimatized to such things is also important because I've seen many clubs who tried, one club, which was our Central FC, players, were open to it. And, but still, the cost to bring it in is pretty hefty, but it's a valuable asset that I think the national team should have had. And, kudos to guys like Stephen Hart, and I'm sure Terry and other coaches as well as. I know Dennis as well tried to implement it a couple times. He brought in some stat zone guys. But this is where we need to be because you've seen these guys. These guys have basically what this does is you can get real-time solutions and scenarios during the game. Or you have a section of your staff designed, pretty much like the NFL. You have a defensive coach and offensive coach where they can sit down, even a goalkeeping coach like yourself could sit down and say, positionally, he was in the wrong spot. You need to be here. You need to be here in real time, and it requires a level of synchronization. And you can tell I'm getting excited and hands are twitching about this because this is something I 200% believe in. I think, in terms of play analysis, for example, today, if we had those systems in place, we could sit down. I'm assuming that they don't, but if they do, and forgive me if I'm wrong, they can sit down, assess their players versus the American players and say, okay, guys, look at these metrics. And then you need somebody to break down the metrics in a way that's simple. You don't have to go into why these metrics exist, but you do it in a way that is easy for the players to understand. And I think that's where the challenge is, because from the moment you start talking about data and analytics too much, you could confuse a lot of people. But to break it down in such a way where it's simplified. For example, you can tell the players, fitness-wise, and covering distance and work rate, which you can get with these metrics. You can show the guys positionally and in terms of their workload, what they did compared to the Americans. So when they're doing their physical preparations, they have numerical values they can look at, which is where we need to be. Even exact times when player fitness effectiveness starts to drop, that's the level we need to be at, in addition to just being physically fit, because we long gone are the days where you can just train and get players physically fit and compete in international football, because you can use this to analyze not just fitness but also tactical awareness, which is an area we brought up, James, where in Trinidad and Tobago I've identified for years our ability to adapt to scenarios on the field. A coach can't be on the field with you. He can train you, but when you're on the field, as the players have to have a certain amount of responsibility, and that comes with training and things like that. And the ability to adapt to certain situations and have guys there who not just clipboards but sit down in real time and saying, okay, the USA has just switched to a 5 in the middle and they're attacking overloading down the wing, so positionally they need to go there. That's where we need to be. And to me, it's scary that after so long, there has never been anybody who has really tried. I've been preaching it for many years, and I know some national coaches have tried it. So to their defense, they did try. But we need that, James. And I know that's a whole off topic there, but this is where we need to be, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel. You hire people who know what they're doing. You pay them like you would a coach. If I know that's an issue with the TTFA right now that they're trying to sort. But that should be something that should be in any team. Don't you agree, James?
No, I agree. I mean, it's something I've used in the past. I mean, even with my academy that I have here, I've used it as well to show them different things. So, I think it's a very useful tool. It's very useful, and as the game's going on, as we saw, So I think it's something, if we don't have, like I say, we need to look at. But as I say, I think we had more issues than that. I mean, as you said, it's off topic a little bit, but I think it's a very good point.
Yeah, and if we go to speak, that's an entire topic we'll speak about, but we're focusing on today and the preparation the Americans have, and this is why it's good to play. I'm looking at the positives, because when you play teams like this, there's little things you can learn from them, not just on the field, but just simply how they do things, organization wise, how they do things. Yes, the Americans are the standard, and also in Mexico in terms of preparation, administrative issues. They don't really have them, and financially they're in a better place than we are. But you learn many things, and that's why it's good for the players to see how these guys prepare. I remembered when Central FC played LA Galaxy and CONCACAF Nations League. Just the comparative analysis by looking at the players' preparation. You learned a lot just by being there. And like I said, I'm not going to be too hard on this team. I'm going to just speak in the context of today's game. 7-0 loss was not great. I don't think anybody likes it. I think Terry is very much aware. If he's the guy who I think he is, he's pretty much going to tell the guys, be very upfront. I'm pretty sure this discussion took place before. But one thing I'm going to say before I end things off, James, I didn't like, there were a couple players I can't remember during the game where I saw there was a little bit of lack of fight. And I'm pretty sure Terry may address that. There was a couple 50-50 balls. I saw Alvin Jones made a really nice run. I can't remember who he passed the ball to. And it was a ball, it probably would not have resulted in a goal. But the lack of of commitment, and this was a sub I think that came on. I didn't notice from a couple players it was almost kind of like they gave up. Sure, you're losing 7-0, but I think that's also an intangible issue that needs to be dealt with. That okay, listen, you need to build that fighting spirit. And I saw a couple players I didn't really like, their attitude. I thought it was kind of okay, we lost and they were done. Almost like shrugging shoulders. What do you think about the mental approach in terms of the fight?
Well, I think if there's one thing we said, I think in our previous shows, that we expected the team to come with a fight and a passion, and Terry to have them organised. Now, I think, as you said, Terry will look at a few players and say, well, you know what, that could be your first and your last game, because if you don't bring that fight and that intensity and that passion and desire, because at the end of the day, let's be honest, to play for your country should be the biggest honour you have as a footballer. If you do not appreciate that honour, you should not be putting the shirt back on. Right. Very simple as that. So it's harsh, but it's true. And they either learn, it's like they say in American football, in a sense, they say you either ship in or you ship out, and so so they're going to have to change a few things. They're going to have to look at themselves, and I think a game like this, it'll take a lot of introspect in the players to look at themselves and say, well, you know what, I didn't do good enough. It's not up to the coach to come in and say, well, John, you didn't have a good enough game. I should know myself, and I should say, well, you know what, I'll work harder, I'll train harder, and I'll show that I am good enough. Hopefully that'll happen. Yep,
correct. It's something that Terry did say when I did my first interview with him, official interview when he became the coach. He did say that. He said, listen, I'm going to try, guys. He has to rebuild a team. And if anybody doesn't show the kind of fight he wants, they're gone. So I'm pretty sure some people are going to get an earful from Terry and, understand that, he's not going to tolerate that. And, Terry obviously has started a project in very unprecedented times. Usually my estimation for when a coach has a cycle and he has to build a team, I always say 5 to 10 years before you really see results. And that's if everything goes correct. Do you think Terry could, how long do you think Terry needs to really get his style of play? Because it's also unfair to really expect to see drastic changes in just one game. So how long do you think he needs for him to really show what he wants before we can really say, okay, should we keep Terry or not?
I think at the end of the day, he has to be able to call on the best players. Was he able to do that? No, he wasn't, And because of COVID and these circumstances, so you can't look at this game and say, let's fire Terry, because that's absolutely ludicrous, Yeah. So, I heard them say, well, you have the World Cup qualifiers, but even it should be more than that, because at the end of the day, you have to give him a chance to put his blueprint down on the team. He's not really been able to do that so far. So let him have this World Cup qualifiers. Hopefully we do well and we get through. But there's other competitions too. And at the end of the day, and this is something I said when I was in Iceland. I was talking to the Icelandic players and I was saying, you went to the World Cup. You can't expect to go to the World Cup every year, or every 4 years, And they said, no, we want to. But this tends to be a culture, you go once, you want to go all the time. But you have to be realistic and say, well, chances are from the smaller countries, it's not going to happen. So you have to look at the other competitions. So for example, like the Nations League, and do well regionally. We have the Gold Cup. So we have to start setting goals for those things. And if they bring back, I don't know if they're going to bring back the Caribbean Cup. So all those competitions. And at the end of the day, we want to see a progress of players. So you have to give them time. So to me, this needs to be a year's job. This cannot be, you give them a few games and done, because that's been the problem. We've done that with too many coaches over the last, 5 years or so. And you can see where we are now. You need to give somebody the chance to stay with a program and let the players learn him, let him learn the players. It's the same, for example, we spoke about the women's job as well. You can't bring in a women's coach and then expect them to, win or lose a few games and then get rid of them. All of these jobs have to be long-term projects if you want to see Trinidad getting back up the rankings and start qualifying for tournaments again.
Because we've heard so many times from these technical committees or whatever that we're going to have to think long-term. But, we don't seem to be patient in Trinidad and Tobago. We seem very short-sighted. And then even, like for example, we're always hearing about developmental plans. We have to build for the future. And also we need to be, ready for now. But I've heard this so many times, and I'm hoping that with this new administration, that we have patience and trust the system. And, of course, then after a certain period of time, you evaluate, because that's only fair to any coach. It's a result-oriented game, unfortunately. But I'm hoping that, we have the right football-educated people that understand that, listen, we are in a ground zero and we can't just become a great team overnight. We are a good way behind in terms of development compared to even our Caribbean islands. So, we'll see, James. We'll see. So, I'm going to end things off, James. It wasn't a great game for us. It was expected that we were going to get defeated. Obviously, a 7-0 loss hurts. To put things in perspective, considering this is a team with minimal experience, guys that didn't play together, it could have been a lot worse. We've had better teams that lost with similar scorelines. I'm not justifying the result. I'm just saying, it's an interesting way to look at it. Even with some of our better players, we lost, 6-0, the most recent thing. Both results are bad, but that's me really kind of half is glass. Glass is half full, approach. So James, as always, it's been a pleasure. And do you want to add anything before we go?
I think the only thing I would say is the one thing I was really hoping for, which obviously didn't come out of the game, is I thought before the game, and I looked at the squad, we had a very good back line. Didn't kind of happen today. So I hope that's something that we can build on. We have some players there that, obviously fitness was an issue. But if we have we use the players in the correct position and things, I think we have a good choice there, to pick from. As I say, I hope it changes on future games. And as I say, there's a lot of young guys here. So this little bit of experience, even although it's a 7-0 defeat, they will remember this. And it will hopefully burn in their hearts a little bit and give them that desire to do more and to fly the flag for Trinidad and Tobago, especially when they go back to our club sides as well. So, there's positives. As I say, the result wasn't the most important thing, as we said. And as I say, that game coming up in Guyana and then the Puerto Rico game, etc., those are the games that are the important ones. So we look forward to seeing what happens in those ones.
All right, folks, so you heard it from our man from Scotland himself, James Baird. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you think in the comment section below. Feel free to let us know your thoughts, and give us your reactions. The good thing is there are no wrong or right answers. We appreciate everything. We'll listen and read, of course, respectfully, of course, what everybody has to say. I know this result has hurt a lot of people. And, also from our international fans, because we have a lot of international fans. Let us know what you think. What were your thoughts on Trinidad and Tobago and also the US and, just generally your thoughts on this particular game. So like I said, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us on, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. James, you can find James. Where can we find you, James?
Well, you can find me under my name, James Baird, on Facebook. And actually, since all you're quarreling with me, I am back on Instagram now. So JM Baird01, you'll find me there as well. Yeah, so there you go. So
we have pulled James out of social media exile. He's now on Instagram now. Before you could have only found James on Facebook, but now he's on Instagram. He's being crazy, folks. Now he's on 2 forms of social media. James, you're being crazy. I like that. So that's where you can find James. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, folks. And strangely enough, on TikTok. Although people who know me know I'm not a fan of these things, but that's where I am. So feel free to engage. Let us know what you think, because one lucky random person may qualify for a chance to win a copy of FIFA 21 from our sponsors, MyStore. So, James, it's as always, it's been a pleasure, and we'll be definitely discussing Trinidad and Tobago football and also world football and footballing topics in the coming weeks. So, stay tuned, folks, and thank you for joining us. Just a reminder, everyone, for more episodes with Shaka Hislop, be sure to head over to our YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more updates, interviews, and content.